Hi, welcome to the webinar today on the difference between professional and personal wills. We're also talking about business succession planning here. Now, a lot of you, I'm sure, have some questions about why you need both a will for your profession as well as one for your personal life, and we're going to go into that today. We're also going to talk about what exactly a professional will is, what it entails, and why some people refer to it as business succession planning versus a professional will. The term professional will is oftentimes used for therapists and other people in the mental health professions. Specifically here in California, there is some debate about whether or not a professional will is actually required of a mental health professional in the state of California. Most mental health professionals do believe that a professional will is required of them. However, a lot of them still haven't gone through the process of putting one in place. A lot of the things that apply to a professional will for a mental health professional can also apply to your business succession planning in your own business. Whether you're a mental health professional, you have confidentiality issues or not. All of those things, if you have them, great, we can absolutely deal with them. But if you don't have them, we can deal with your business in a way that doesn't involve those things as well. To some degree, everybody has some level of professional confidentiality issues though, whether that be passwords, emails, client lists, your product information, anything of that sort could potentially be considered confidential, and you may need to do something about that. So, most people know what a personal will is. That's where you sit down and you write out, either in your own handwriting or with an attorney, something that you want to take care of everything that happens to your stuff when you die. Now, a professional will is slightly different. Professional will also deals with what happens to your business when you die, but it can also deal with what happens to your business if you don't die, but something else happens to you that requires some sort of long-term absence from your business. That could be a good thing. Maybe you've decided to take a 6-month trip around the world, or you've decided to now be a snowbird and you're going to live in one place for half the year and another place for the other half of the year. So it could absolutely be a good thing that means that you're away from your business. Maybe you've just decided to retire, but you want your business to continue without you. But it may also be something a little more, well, not so nice. Perhaps you had a stroke and something happened where you couldn't handle your business affairs any longer, or you've had a prolonged illness of some other sort that requires you to be away from your business, or, perhaps you did die. Those things can all be dealt with a professional will as well. So your personal will is going to deal with your personal effects. It's going to deal with how you want your house distributed, how you want your stocks and bonds distributed, what you want to happen to your person when you die. So your burial arrangements or your cremation arrangements, any of those things that you've discussed. Now, in our previous segment, we did talk about the difference between a living trust and a will, and you may want to consider a living trust for the distribution of your personal assets as well. But let's just assume for today's discussion that you're just going to have a will. That's fine. We can discuss the difference between a trust and a will at another time if you need to do that. But with a personal will, all you're going to be dealing with are your personal assets and the things that you want to happen to your personal physical being. The other thing that you can discuss in your personal will, though, is how you want to pay someone to help deal with your professional will. And that is actually very much a recommendation that your personal will and your professional will need to be reviewed side by side. You need to look at them and make sure that there's no inconsistencies between the two of them, and that you have allocated some funds to pay for an executor of your professional will in the event that somebody is going to be paid to handle those affairs for you. So that's your personal will. Your personal will is dealing with your personal stuff. But let's talk about your professional will or your business succession plan. Let's talk about the different things that you need to consider when you're making one of these up. So, all right, the first thing is Who's going to take care of your professional will? Who's going to be the executor of your business? Is it going to be a family member? Is it going to be a friend? Is it going to be a colleague that you already work with? Perhaps it's a manager at your business currently. All of those people are possibilities. It is up to you to decide who makes the most sense for your business. And I will warn you that generally it's not your spouse and it's not another family member. Remember that those people are grieving your death or your incapacity, and they're dealing with all of your personal issues. You may need someone who can just deal with your professional issues with your business in the event that something happens, that you're not there, that you're, incapacitated, or that you've died. Also, remember that if you're making a succession plan that takes into account long absences for good reasons, your family members, friends, wife, etc. may be there with you on those 6-month-long excursions around the world. So naming them as your executor or as your successor may not make any sense whatsoever. That's totally fine. You can absolutely pick whomever you like for that job. You just need to keep in mind what your options are and what they're going to be responsible for. Remember, this person is going to be the person who takes over your business. They are going to act as if they are you for all intents and purposes. So you want to pick wisely. You also need to have at least one backup, probably 2, just in case something happens to the person that you designated as your executor. So while you're out being a snowbird for 6 months of the year, maybe they're doing the same thing, but their 6 months and yours only overlap by a month. It still may mean that you need someone else to take over for that month while you're both gone. Also, things change over time. So it may be that while somebody is a great fit today, they're not a great fit 5 years from now, but one of your successors is. So these are all things to keep in mind, and you just need to plan ahead that the person that you've designated may or may not be able to deal with everything at the time that they're needed. So we've talked about the fact that you need to decide who's going to take charge and then who's going to be your backup, just in case something happens to the person that you've originally designated. At least one, maybe more. The other thing is that you need to coordinate your planning. You need to make sure that you sit down with everyone that you've decided is going to take over for you and let them know what your expectations are, what they're going to be in charge of, and have everybody in on the conversation. You never know what one person might bring to the puzzle that you've never thought about before. So having a coordinated plan, getting everyone together and talking to them about the fact that you're making a plan and that you're naming them as a successor to your business can actually bring to light some things that you yourself may not have considered before. The other thing is that you might think that something is common knowledge and it isn't. So when you bring people together, it will give you the opportunity to show them all of those things that you may know right like the back of your hand, but they have no idea about. Something else to consider is the nuts and bolts of things. By the nuts and bolts, I mean, where are the keys to your office? Who has copies? How many copies are there? What's the contact information for everybody who has a copy of the key to your office? Are there security codes that somebody needs to know? Are there passwords? Are there, logins? All of that information needs to be kept somewhere. And it needs to be accessible to your successors when they need it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to hand over a flash drive with all of the information on it today, but you do want to have that available for them and have specific plans on when it should get to them. So if you don't want them to have access to your email or to your keys to your office right this second, that's fine. But put together a package that is to be delivered to your successor upon necessity. So at the time of your incapacity, something you can hand off to them on your way to the airport for your world globe trotting tour, or something that your executor for your personal will can give to them in the event of your death. Another thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start keeping a schedule and other pertinent information about what you do on a daily basis. Part of the reason for this is that someone doesn't know the ins and outs of your job. They don't know who you're planning on meeting in the event that something happens to you suddenly. They don't know what you do every day to keep the business running. Now, of course, if your business is something that requires a lot of training to take over for you, you're going to want to discuss this with your successor in advance and begin the training process with them. If it's something where you can just keep a log of things that you do, types of meetings that you have, certain contacts that will be beneficial, your schedule, etc., then that can work too. But it is definitely something that you need to take into consideration when you're forming these business plans. What does your schedule look like? What do you do on a daily basis? Who can be counted on to take over some of those tasks while someone's learning something new? Again, it's all about making a plan. That's what business succession planning is all about. Okay, let's talk about some confidential things. Now, as I mentioned, mental health professionals are required to have a professional well, a business succession plan that deals with confidentiality issues. If you also have confidentiality issues in your business, you may need to have a similar plan. This can look something along the lines of having a disclosure in your retainer agreement that you have a colleague who will be utilized as your successor in the event that anything happens to you, and that the patient or your clients have signed off on their confidential material being released to that person in the event of your incapacity or death. So these are things that can be built into standard retainer agreements, standard scope of work agreements, etc., so long as they are discussed with the client or with the patient at the time that they sign them. If you have strictly confidential material that adheres to some of these strict requirements, you need to be thinking about who is going to be accessing records after your death in the event of your incapacity or in the event that you're gone for long periods of time. You absolutely must put that in writing and keep it somewhere where it is accessible to your successor, to your executor, in the event that it becomes necessary. Something else that you may want to consider is types of communication. Do you have particular clients or vendors or other personnel that need to be communicated with in one way versus another? As in, you can leave a message for Tom on this answering machine, but do not leave a message for him on this other phone number. You can call Susie, but do not send her an email. You can email Jack, but do not give him a phone call. These are things that you should be keeping in your client files or in your notes somewhere to your successor so that they know the proper means of communication, especially if you're dealing with confidential materials. You are going to want to deal, again, there's a little bit of nuts and bolts things that we need to deal with. What does your answering machine say? What does your email account say? Do you have an out-of-office reply that could be turned on? These are just the little things that need to happen. You need to make certain that your clientele, that your patients, that your customers know what has happened so that they can make informed decisions about how to move on, whether or not you're there to deal with them. Now, in some businesses, this isn't as important. Being under new management or having someone take over in your stead doesn't make a difference. For example, if you shop at Target, you don't care if the CEO of Target changes from one day to the next, generally. And so Target doesn't need to change its answering machines and its email accounts and all of the rest of that to reflect that change in personnel. But for you, if your business is built on your relationship with clients, it absolutely is necessary to notify clients or to notify patients that there's been a change. that you are no longer available to them, or that you will be unavailable to them for a specified period of time, and that they will be working with somebody else. This is just a matter of good customer service. Now, if you have clients or customers or patients who require some sort of a notification, it's best if you work on drafting your notifications ahead of time. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be personalized to each client, but if you have a small enough clientele where you can, that obviously would be best. You can keep a copy of this notification in their files, or you can keep a separate file folder for notifications, and you can slip information into that folder, which again, your executor or successor will know exactly where to find that in the event that it becomes necessary for them to do so. If you do not want to do some sort of personalized notification, you do still need to let your executor or successor know how you intend for them to notify clientele and whether you intend for them to notify clientele about the change in management or ownership. This goes the same for colleagues. If you have colleagues in your profession that you rely on greatly, or you have reciprocal referral agreements, anything of that nature, you need to figure out how you're going to notify your colleagues about the different things that may happen in your business. Some businesses require professional liability coverage. You should have a copy of your policy available to your executor so that they can deal with any of the requirements of that policy after the time of your death. Let's see. So another thing that we all need to consider are our billing records, procedures, and instructions. Now, if you've ever worked for a large corporation, you know that they have a procedures manual for just about everything. Even though you may be there on your own, you should still have a procedures manual for how you operate your business. First of all, it just helps you get clarity on how your business runs, what you do, what works, what doesn't, and all the rest of that. So it's a perfect tool for you as a solopreneur or as a small business owner to really dive into your business, figure out how it works, all of the things that you do that you just don't even think about on a daily basis. And it can be a wonderful tool for actually working on your business and growing your business. But it's also important in the terms of succession planning. If I have a step-by-step guideline of how to run your business, it makes it much easier for me to do that. If, on the other hand, I'm just trying to remember all of the things that I think I've seen you do or that I've heard you do, or if I'm your colleague and I own my own business, trying to run your business the way that I run my business, well, that may not work out quite so well for me. And it may not work out quite so well for your business either. So this is something that you need to take into account. What are your procedures? What are your policies? What things are important to your business and can be laid out step by step so that your successor knows exactly how to handle your business for you without you there? Expenses. We discussed this just a tiny bit at the beginning, but remember that there are expenses involved in dealing with the succession of your business. Now, if your business is just continuing without you, there may not be significant expenses, perhaps a change in salary for someone for a time being, or, perhaps a small change in ordering supplies and other things of that nature, but there shouldn't be any major changes or significant expenses that go along with planning for a long-term management situation by a partner, a colleague, or a manager in your business. But there will be significant expenses in the event of a closure of your business. These expenses can be things such as a business valuation if your family, friends are planning on selling off your business and it is a business that is portable in such a way. It may take the place of or look like fees that are paid to your executor or your successor Remember, if this is a colleague or somebody else who runs their own business, they're taking time away from their business to help shut down yours. They need to be compensated for that properly. Even if it is an employee or a manager of some sort, but you're asking them to step up and take on significant duties above and beyond their normal responsibilities, they need to be compensated for that. There can also be things such as, in addition to expenses, there can be extra revenues that are created by the closure of your business, perhaps selling off office furniture, leasing space out to somebody else, selling off the business itself, selling off client lists if you're able to do that in your business. All of these things can create revenue. Those need to be accounted for properly in your business, but they also need to be turned over to the proper person who's dealing with your personal will so that they can be distributed as assets of your estate. All right. Just as a quick aside, we always recommend that you have anything of this nature reviewed by a legal professional in your area, just to make certain that you have covered all of your bases, that you are in compliance with any rules of your personal profession. So like I mentioned with mental health professionals, they're required to do certain things and to have certain aspects covered by a professional will or by a business succession plan. So you do want to make sure that you're getting this reviewed by legal personnel in order to make certain that it is on the up and up. The other thing that you want to do is make sure that there are copies of your succession plan or your professional will that are handed out to the proper personnel. So if you're going to name an executor in your professional will or your succession plan, you want to make sure that they have a copy of the paperwork that states that they are being named as the executor or as the successor for your business. Now, this does not necessarily mean that you have to give them a copy of everything that includes all of your passwords, where to find your scheduling book, how to access the bank accounts for the business, any of those things. As I mentioned before, you can absolutely keep those private things private and in a space where your successor will be able to access them. But you do need to give them a copy of the professional will so that they can access that file of information or that trove of information in order to go forward with your succession plan. The other thing is you need to discuss with your personal executor the fact that you have a professional will, and you should give them a copy of the professional will or the business succession plan so that they know who should be coming to get copies of keys or to pick up your file that you've left behind for them, or just to discuss with the personal representative of your estate how the professional representative plans on going through your succession plan and executing your desires. You need to make certain that people have copies of enough information that they know how to communicate with one another and get the things into the hands of the right people. It does no good to make a succession plan if I don't know where your keys are to your office, especially if all of the things that I need to run your office are inside of it. So these are some practical things that you need to take into account. You may also decide that you want to leave copies of your professional will with the successors, just in case something happens to the original executor or the original successor that you've chosen. Then the subsequent successors would also have copies of your professional will so that they could contact your personal representative, get in touch with whomever they need to, get the proper information, and start working on your succession plan. The last thing to remember is that these types of things are fluid. Your business changes on a regular basis. Your succession plan should also change on a regular basis. If you're not reviewing your succession plan at least once a year, you're probably not actually planning for your future and for the future of your business. You need to make certain that you're making these plans and that you're reviewing them regularly, that you're checking in with your successors who you've nominated, make certain that they're still in the same business, that they're still local, that they still are willing and able to act as your successor. I mean, who knows? Something may have happened to them that you just couldn't have planned on. So you should be reviewing this plan at least once a year. And if it is no longer meets your needs, it no longer deals with the issues that you need it to deal with, then change it. That's the great thing about a succession plan. That's the great thing about an estate plan. These things are fluid and they can change with you and with your needs and with your wants and desires. They can grow with your business. They can change with your business. There is no limit to what you can do with a business succession plan, with a professional will, and there's no limit to what you can do with your own estate plan for your personal assets and your personal finances. The only thing that is keeping these things from being everything that you want them to be is you. So, to review, you need to go through some basic steps. Look at your business. Make policies and procedures about how things work, what you do on a daily basis, who you contact, how you contact them, if there are yeses and nos about how to contact people. If you work with confidential material or confidential contacts and you require their permission to turn any of their information over to another person, you need to make certain that that language is included in your retainer agreements, in your work scope orders, anything that you have the client sign that would tell them, hey, so-and-so is going to take over if anything happens to me. I need your permission to release your information to them. They need to sign off on that, and you need to keep a copy of that in their file or in a separate file that notifies your successor who it is okay to contact and who it is not okay to contact. So that's something else to consider. You need to be going through, like I said, on a daily basis. What are your tasks? How do you accomplish them? Is there a step-by-step policy or procedure for anything? All of that needs to be written down. It will help you with your business, figuring out what you're doing, whether or not you can make any changes, grow your business in another way, but it also will give your successor a step-by-step plan of how to handle what you handle on a daily basis. You need to have lists of vendors, contacts, clients, etc., and let your successor know how to utilize those, who's great for what, who can take over something, so that the successor doesn't have to do it all on their own. You need to make a plan for your personal life that includes information about how to pay this professional executor who's going to handle all of your professional business for you. So these are just some of the things that you need to consider when making a business succession plan. Now, you can certainly work with a professional to create one of these. You can start one on your own. You had a business plan to get started, right? You need one to finish up your business too, and to take care of it in case anything happens to you. So with that, I will open up the floor to anyone who has any questions about what we've discussed. I know there's a lot of information in there. If you'd like some more in-depth information, I will be working with Heather Christensen. She is the CEO of CFO To Go, which is a virtual bookkeeping and financial analysis firm. They work with small to medium-sized businesses to help you out with all of your financial needs and planning regarding your business. And we offer an introductory event where we will discuss sort of the life cycle of your business from entity formation all the way to business succession planning on the legal side, and all of the finances from getting yourself set up to valuations and getting your business sold or closed down on the end, and then everything in between. So we offer an introductory event on that. It's a couple of hours. You get to sit down and have some information with the two of us. Otherwise, we also offer a 4-week-long event where you are going to get personalized attention, weekly calls, and additional information that you can utilize in your business to get yourself started. So if you have questions about any of that, please feel free to contact either Heather or myself. And with that, I will open up the floor to questions about business succession planning or personal wills and how those two things interact.